Dr. Burrows, that's supposed to be you. Participants, students,
a little creepy, but you get the idea, right? All right, so what I want you to do is take 1 minute right now at your table and talk about which one of those two people do you agree with the most? Who made the best argument? What do you think about that debate?
well,
Qualitative is better.
Yeah, we liked the lady better because we said there's too many outside factors that you couldn't control. So to try to make you quantify, everything would be like near impossible, and it would just be. I mean, it's nice when things are quantitative, like with numbers and stuff. But like, there's just too many outside factors and things that.
Okay, Ray?
The kind of consensus for our table was that while we'd like to be able to just say, oh, well, this one's right or this one's right, we all kind of agreed that you have to have a little bit of both, and it also depends greatly on what are you researching. So, like, are you really looking, is your main focus, is this improving their test scores, or like do you even care if the students enjoyed what you were doing, or what are you really looking at? And that's what it depends on.
Okay, so what outcome are you trying to measure? If it's purely an academic achievement type of outcome, a test might be good enough. But if there's something attitudinal you want to get at, the test probably isn't going to tell you that, right? Anna,
Just going off of that, we said basically the exact same thing. Molly's words were the same as just Maria's. So.
One brain, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, good. Anybody want to defend the quantitative approach? Maybe nothing beyond what we've already brought up, okay, in terms of what the approach
I
is?
think quantitative, it's easier to analyze the data because you don't have to go through and read or look at transcripts of interviews and think about like the common themes. You can literally just look at the numbers and be like, okay, this is what they say, because we all work with numbers so often that it's easy for us to make a graph and say, okay, well, this is what happened, and interpret that versus, I don't know, trying to figure out some way to represent your qualitative data.
Yeah, it definitely is. It's a much more straightforward way of analyzing things. So just a real simple example of this, when I did my dissertation, which I won't tell you too much about because it's kind of like watching somebody else's vacation slides, but at any rate, my dissertation was a combination of quantitative and qualitative, but a lot of qualitative. I did a lot of interviews of kids and then used interview quotes and all that sort of thing. And my dissertation ran like 225 pages. The first dissertation committee that I served on here at the university was somebody in the psychology department getting a doctorate in psychology that ran a purely quantitative study. Collected the data, ran the tables, ran the numbers, and wrote it up. His dissertation was less than 25 pages. And I looked at that one, wow, mine was 225. Why was mine 200 pages longer? Because my intent was totally different. I was taking more of a qualitative approach, talking to people, interviewing, journals, writing, quoting. He wasn't concerned about that. He collected quantitative data, cranked out the numbers, and said, here's what we know. So really, what are you trying to accomplish in your study? And if you do a little bit of both of those things, it does give you sort of both sides of the fence, so that you can maybe be able to make some arguments about numerical gains that students got over time, maybe academic knowledge or whatever, but also be able to talk a little bit about their attitudes and their beliefs and what they experience and stuff. And so sometimes they use these what they call mixed methods together in the same study to make that determination. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an either-or kind of argument. But I will tell you that this argument goes on and on and on and on, okay? For example, back 5 years ago, there was a committee that was in Washington, D.C. that was trying to kind of pull out what math education research do we have to support best practices in the classroom. And we want to go through all of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of math research studies that have been published over the last several years and grab only the ones that we believe really ought to drive what we do in the classroom. And what that committee decided was, if the study isn't quantitative, we're just going to throw it out. We will not take any qualitative data. We want quantitative, hard numbers. Show me that there's a statistical significance between this and this, numerically, and we can use that data. If it's qualitative, we're not interested. Isn't that interesting? So they just completely threw out that entire... Now, having said that, I was at a committee meeting just a few weeks ago, giving a presentation to a group of faculty members who sit on the Human Subjects Review Board, which makes decisions about what research gets approved and so forth on campus. We'll talk more about that later. But at any rate, I was speaking to them a little bit. They called me in to talk a little bit about what we do with your projects in this program, and so I gave them a little presentation. And the people on that committee got into an argument about qualitative versus quantitative. It was basically that video all over again. I could have videotaped it. I mean, there was one person who said, let's face it, can you really show a significant gain over time by using anything other than quantitative research? And a person across the table said, I resent you saying that, because my area of research is all qualitative, and what I do in my job is all qualitative, and I can show changes in population over time because I do ethnographic research, which means that I go out into the field and I interview people and I observe people, and I can show changes over time based on that kind of data, and I don't have to collect a single number to do it. And the two of them started going back and forth, and I went, whoa. And so I told them, I said, you know what, why don't you take it outside, because we really need to have a conversation more about action. That's what I came for. So we sort of went back to that, but the fact is, they couldn't agree even within that committee. You got 12 people around the table, and they didn't, from the same university, they don't agree on that either. So this debate goes on and on. I really do believe that in the end, we become a little bit more powerful with the arguments that we make if we use a little bit of those mixed methods of quantitative and qualitative. So I wanted to take us into a couple of other research studies just for a few minutes to think about that. I put up at Canvas 2 other articles. Would you pull that up? There are, if you go to...
Nope. Wi-Fi. Actually, it's over. So we should have our own Wi-Fi.
We need our own router. I'll sign the form. Don't worry, I got you. I'll make my connection.
We're ready.
I will, but
I'm
they're
friends with 3
too,
different departments. I will mix them.
I got that.
I do not.
Seriously, I can, oh, you took over.
Watch out.
I have this department and the rest are
31.
One thing that I would ask, when you come to our class sessions, our 3160 and the 4160s, always bring a laptop or electronic device with you, because we do a lot of this kind of stuff, searching, looking things up, and so forth. I know Wendy usually puts out a reminder about that, but if you just remember kind of to do that. This is kind of a common thing that we'll do in all our sessions.
Was it?
Yeah, I have both of them.
Don't diet.
Try not to.
We need 2 more years. Come on, almost done.
2 more years. You don't need like a year and a half.
Which one was it at first?
Alright,
It's a little line.
You're in the 3/4.
We're only like a 50 minutes semester.
Can we not talk about that? I'm already labored now.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, it's mouth to mouth, we're definitely choking.
Yeah.
Back blows.
I'm first,
That's actually what you're supposed to do.
So am I.
Yeah, but you can back blows here. Until they can't breathe anymore. And then you
What
start.
I'd like to do
Come
is,
on.
let's just divide this side of the room over here. Would you look at the qualitative study, the first one, and this side of the room over here, those 2 tables, look at the quantitative one. And the job right now is not to read it in any detail, because those are long articles, okay? I want you to do literally about a 3-minute scan. Just look over the article, maybe read the abstract at the top, scan through it, and just get a sense of what is in that article. What does it look like? That's the main thing I want you to focus on. What does it look like as you look at that article? Okay, just take about 3 minutes. Look on with somebody if you can.